Reinhardt. This is what happens when the immovable object and the unstoppable force put aside their differences and pick up a slick German accent. Our 10-foot powerhouse of steel and rocket fuel is one of Overwatch's most iconic heroes and one of the most defining. Welcome everybody to another episode of Overwatch Champions. Today's a special episode because we're starting the first of many of our hero guides. We asked you guys to tell us in the comments which hero you'd like to see first, and Hasselhoff's #1 fan, Reinhardt, is our winner. In this guide, we'll cover his abilities in full detail, as well as talk about positioning, communication, and show some examples of it all in action. Since release day, Reinhardt has been a staple of the ever-shifting meta, being a huge part of both offense and defense. With his toolkit, he's a powerful addition to almost any lineup, and despite his age, he continues to be a beacon of what Overwatch stands for. It's no secret that there is no easy way to take this man down, and you don't want to get caught in his rocket charge.
I'm the ultimate crushing machine!
First off, let's talk about his abilities. His normal attack is a powerful swing of his rocket-powered hammer, which deals 75 damage and has some considerable force, which causes targets to get bounced around. Sometimes it's better to go wild and swing away in the fray than hold your shield up. Next up, we have Fire Strike. Reinhardt conjures a wave of fire that travels in a straight line towards his crosshair, dealing 100 damage to each player it hits and passing through all shields and players until it hits a wall. The only two abilities in the game capable of stopping this are Genji's Deflect and D.Va's Defense Matrix. This ability has seemingly infinite range, and it also has some interesting properties. It will not pass through an object completely, although if it clips the top or bottom of a wall or object without the center mass making contact, it will actually continue along. This is much harder to do if you're hitting a vertical object than a horizontal object, because the shape of the box is a very thin rectangle. Next up, Rocket Charge. Reinhardt hunches down and ignites the massive jet engine on his back, propelling him forward like a rocket-powered linebacker. If it makes contact with a player head-on within a small angle, it grabs the player until the charge stops, dropping them sometimes over a cliff, or when it hits a wall. Hitting a player into the wall with this charge deals 300 damage and briefly stuns. Zarya's shield will prevent the damage and the stun, but not the displacement of the charge, so keep that in mind if you're charging an area where there might be a Zarya or Zarya herself. Reinhardt's shield is possibly his most iconic ability. It allows allies to stand behind and shoot through while blocking most projectiles. Fire Strike and Symmetra's Charge Ball will actually go through. It has 2000 HP and regenerates at a rate of about 250 per second. As your shield becomes more damaged, there are visual cues to indicate that it's close to being destroyed. If you allow your shield to be completely destroyed, there will be a short delay before it begins to recharge, so you should try to never let your shield be completely drained to zero. Lastly, Earth Shatter, a powerful conical smash that knocks enemies down, stunning them for 2 seconds and dealing 50 damage. The reach on this ability is extremely deceiving, and I'm sure anyone that's been hit by it has probably noticed this. This ability can be blocked by shields such as Winston's Bubble, an enemy Reinhardt shield, or a Zarya shield, but it cannot be deflected by Genji or blocked by Defensive Matrix as it's not a projectile. This can actually travel underneath objects as well, such as the payload and certain hover cars on different maps, so keep that in mind when you're about to ult around a corner. Once you've used Earth Shatter, there are multiple ways that you can combine your abilities, but catching most people with Fire Strike and Charge is the best way to handle it. Now that we've covered the basics of the abilities, let's take a look at how and where to use them in-game. Because of Reinhardt's role and combination of abilities, you lead the charge, and communication is king. Simply blowing your abilities without telling your team when you're ready to attack, or where they should be going to group up and support you, will really minimize the overall effectiveness of the push. Recognizing good opportunities to push and pressure the enemy, as well as when you should be holding your shield and defending your team, is key to playing Reinhardt. In this clip, we've been holding the choke point for a little while, and we finally get some picks and decide to rush, because I use communication to let my team know that we have that opening, and that I'm going to push. Alright, there we got to go.
They have a turret.
Now, it's important to note that in this scenario, I'm only grouped with one friend, so this coordination is purely off the cuff, because we used our mics and had good communication. In our next push here, I called out that we should be going to use Lucio's speed boost and ultimate to push into the right side of sight, so that we could spread out and flank their Torbjorn and get the high ground. I also blocked the enemy Reinhardt's ultimate, and they used their sound barrier. Unfortunately, this is also a good example of what can happen when you aren't 100% sure that your team understands the intended strategy, as we get split up and some abilities come out late and we miss our intended targets.
Right side. Yeah. When we go in next time, we're going to go through that right hallway, we're going to speed around the right, go under their bridge, and go up top and drop down on them. Because they're playing with turrets and squishies up top.
Since a lot of pushes revolve around Reinhardt's shield and Lucio's speed boost, followed by ultimates, you really need to explain the strategy in full so that you know that your team is on board. In the previous clip, you could hear me explaining to my team what I wanted to do for the next push, but we weren't able to successfully execute because we stayed in one spot for too long. We needed to know what to do on follow-up, and unfortunately there was a miscommunication. On the other hand, here we have a good example of how an attack strategy can go right. We pushed around the left, flanking them, and I told D.Va that I was going to drop in and Shatter when we got in, and to use her self-destruct. We executed well and ended up wiping nearly the entire team and capturing the point. Having a plan to push in a certain area and combine ultimates, especially Earth Shatter with a good damaging ultimate, is a great way to engage a push. Having communication with your team is of course important, but knowing how to position yourself is also huge, since you are literally your team's front wall. Making sure that you're in a good position to defend yourself and your teammates and retaliate against aggressors is what Reinhardt is all about. Here you can see that despite being a tank, I find a good opportunity to flank their team with Earth Shatter and it gives us an opening. Then the team follows up and we're able to push the payload into the choke. In this last clip, I'm standing at the edge of the choke giving my team a chance to spam damage at the attackers while they move up the lane and throwing out fire strikes as often as I can. It's important to do this since hitting a player with fire strike gives you about 9% ultimate charge, so a few well-placed fire strikes can charge your ultimate before any action really happens, which is a huge advantage. As Reinhardt, a lot of responsibility lies on you, and your team needs to know what you're doing and what you want to do. I hope that these examples have been helpful to give you a good understanding of how and when to use your abilities and what you can provide for your team. You're a huge threat as Reinhardt, and being in their face creating pressure and blocking damage for your team allows them to move freely and catch mistakes from the enemy team. That's all for this episode, guys. We thank you for stopping by, and we hope you enjoy the first hero guide. Let us know in the comments what hero you'd like to see next, and tell me what your favorite Reinhardt skin is. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button, and you can also click here to check out our previous videos. Now get out there and take a page out of Reinhardt's book. Be the hammer.